You know what a green bean field in July reminds me of? Big velvet bucks. And in honor of Exodus Velvet Fest from July 15th to August 19th, I'm going to show you a whole bunch of footage of big velvet deer. Every camera order in this time frame comes with a scratch-off card that could save you 15 to 25% off your next camera or the new MMT arrows. Also, they have exclusive Velvet Fest savings announced on their email newsletter, so visit their website at exodusoutdoorgear.com and sign up for their newsletter. To participate in Velvet Fest, use hashtag VelvetFest on social media to win prizes throughout their online event. They'll be sending out all kinds of cool Exodus outdoor gear to random people that participate on social media. So visit exodusoutdoorgear.com and get you some trail cameras and arrows. All right, everybody, got to talk to you a little bit about stealth strips. I just got my kit in from Lou at Stealth Outdoors for my new mini beast sticks that I just got in the mail last week. Look at this smoke camo pattern. I love this pattern. It blends into the tree real nicely. My favorite product from Lou is these buckle silencers. These things are awesome. They keep your buckle from making noise on your stick there. I'm gonna wrap the beast sticks with these stealth strips I just got in. If you need you some stealth strips, go to stealthoutdoors.com and pick you up some stealth strips. All right, and finally, before we start the show, I got to talk about beast gear real quick. I just got these minis in. I've been running the longs for since the longs came out. I had the original longs, and I got to say, man, these minis are nice. They're a little bit lighter. They also are going to be a lot more compact on my stand, and I love them. Every time I put one of these beast sticks together, it just amazes me at how good quality they are and how tight the tolerances are. So if you haven't picked you up the best stick in the industry, go get you some beast minis. Also, don't forget about the stand. In my opinion, the best hang-on stand money can buy in the mobile gear market. So go to huntingbeastgear.com and get you some beast gear. All right, let's get to the show. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Hope everybody's doing good tonight. We got quite a few people on already, so that's a good sign for tonight. We've got a good topic tonight. We're going to talk about trail cameras and kind of some stuff Dan has going on this year with his fleet of trail cameras, and that's why you see Mr. Chad Sylvester from Exodus at the bottom of the screen here. He's going to join us tonight and talk about trail cameras. See a whole bunch of familiar names in the comments, so welcome everybody. All right, let's go through some housekeeping stuff. As usual, we'll try to do some questions at the end. So if you got any questions, just leave them in the comments. We're going to probably take some call-ins too, and I'll put that link in the comments here after a bit, as long as I don't forget. So if I forget, start hollering at me in the comments, and I will I'll be sure to put them in there. Okay, I made an executive decision on the giveaway for the sticks. I'm going to give them away at the end of July, or if we hit 5,000 subscribers before the end of July, I'll give them away then. But we're tracking still. We're getting close, but I'm wanting to get them out so I can move on to the next giveaway. So with that being said, make sure you subscribe if you guys haven't and you're on here. I'm going to draw probably the first podcast in August. I'll probably draw the winners of the mini sticks. What else? Oh, a whole bunch of super chats last week. That was awesome. So everybody that sent us a super chat, thanks so much. One request from Ricky Poo. Him and the guys from Light 'em Up Outdoors are going to have a booth, hunting beast gear booth at the Mississippi Wildlife Extravaganza. So if you guys are all from the South, y'all can go down there and see some of the beast gear and whatnot down in Mississippi. Me and Dan will be up in Wisconsin. I'm sure Rick will be there too. When is that? When's Deer Fest, Dan?
It's coming up pretty quick here.
Like
Early August.
Yeah, like in a few weeks. But anyway, how's it going, Chad?
It's going good, man. Just kind of hanging out here in Northeast Ohio. Yeah. Things are good.
You've been pretty busy lately.
We've been very busy. The Arrow launch about 2 weeks ago, I believe. I think it was around July 1st, maybe a couple of days, maybe the last couple of days of June, something like that. But yeah, it never seems to slow down, and this is the time for us. I mean, I'm sure you guys do the same, Dan. It's like you try to wrap up as many loose ends as you can because come September or October, that's it.
Yeah.
So
I got me some of those arrows. They're shooting really nice.
Good.
Yeah, and we've been talking about the arrows for a couple weeks on the podcast, but I wanted you to hop on here and talk about the technology and what makes the MMT arrow different. MMT arrow different from a standard arrow a guy would buy at the pro shop.
Yeah, there's a couple things. One is the carbon insert, the carbon tube that we install on the front of the arrow. So there's a 6-inch carbon tube that we install on the front, which elongates the forward node of your arrow. So it helps the arrow recover after work's been applied to it. So after you shoot it, if you look at this stuff like on a high-speed camera, which we've just done a ton of testing, which is really cool. Like you see some of these high-speed cameras and these arrows are just they look like they should explode. Like the way that they're bending and rotating and oscillating. It's really neat to see. So
back up. Can you explain what a node is?
Yeah.
The node of your arrow.
So there's two spots on your arrow. There's one on towards the front of your arrow where your point or broadhead would screw into, and then there's also one on the back. And on a typical arrow, they're spots. And I say a spot, it might be like an 1/8 of an inch spot. But that's where all the movement, so the flexing, the bending, the torsion, the compression, the tension, when your arrow is doing a bunch of weird things in flight, all those forces go through those spots. Some people could say vibration. You could tap that arrow on your leg and you can move your finger down the shaft, and where you feel the most vibration is the two nodes. So with that inner carbon tube on the front, it takes that node from being like an 1/8 of an inch to an inch, sometimes 1.25 inches. Sometimes it depends on what kind of point weight and point length that you have on the front of that. But essentially, we just elongated that. And ideally, that should sit on your arrow rest, especially like Dan, if you're shooting, a capture style or a fixed rest, something, a non-drop away. It becomes a bigger deal, but that helps the arrow recover faster. And then there's some, the shaft is patented. There's a 1-to-1 weave there to help really increase the torsion strength. And also there's a safety factor there. I know a lot of guys have probably seen those images floating around social with carbon splinters or a splintered carbon shaft through somebody's hands. And we've all probably shot an arrow and seen it explode. These arrows don't fracture, or they don't break like that. They actually fracture. So we just did some torture testing over on our YouTube channel, and we were just shooting these things into like a concrete paver, like somebody would set out for a sidewalk, and showed the different failure points and how they break and different things. So it's just we're just at the first layer of this whole thing. I mean, the concept around the builder is still not completely executed. We had a little bit of trouble on the back end with coding and outsourcing that. So we had to get a new coder in to finish building this. But ideally, we want to be able to offer several different options for folks based around the exact setup and animal that they want to chase. So we want to be able to have kinetic energy and momentum calculators built in there to let folks know, hey, if you choose to buy this arrow, this setup is going to work best on antelope and whitetail, or maybe it's a little bit heavier and you have more momentum, so it's geared more towards bigger animals like elk or moose or whatnot. So that's the idea around the e-commerce builder.
Mm. You know, I was abusing the hell out of my arrows and actually ripped one of the feathers. And when I shot it, the feather came off, and right out of the bow, the arrow went all wonky. Mm-hmm. And what was surprising was it completely corrected itself and hit right in the group with the rest of the arrows with only 2 feathers. I would have off into space.
Right. There's a little bit of science there behind the vanes that we chose. Those vanes that your build was set up with are Arrow Vane 2 from Fire Knock, and they're designed with an airfoil. So as those things spin, it creates lift because there is more pressure on the underside of that vane than the top side, which helps with your center of pressure. So if you look at stable flight between an arrow, you have the center of gravity, which can change with like your FOC or what you're doing up front. And then on the backside, you have center of pressure. And the further away you get those 2 points, the more stable your arrow becomes. But you have to be careful because, if you start your revolution rate too fast, like your spinning rate, and you tend to get some yawing and pitching in that arrow, a lot of times that is what can cause broadhead planning if you're shooting big fixed blade broadheads. So you have to be careful, like even guys shooting helicals, you got to be careful on how much offset or how much helical you put in there, because once that spin rate goes to a certain point, you're looking at like diminishing returns. Stuff gets complicated, man. At the end of the day, I mean, it gets really complicated, and pull me back in anytime. But it's like, know your setup, know how much kinetic energy and momentum you have and what you need to kill a whitetail or kill a moose or a bear or whatever it is that you're hunting. Get there with the best flight trajectory and shoot whatever you have confidence in at the end of the day, because there's no right or wrong. I mean, the goal is 2 holes, and if you can do that on any animal that you're hunting, then it's a win.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like something that never gets talked about, we talk about arrows so much, and it's like no matter what arrow you have, if your bow isn't in tune, it doesn't matter. Something we don't talk about enough. Everybody knows how to build a dang arrow, but they don't know how to tune a bow.
100%.
So anyway, all right, enough arrow talk. We don't want to bore people too much. Some people love that kind of stuff, but let's talk about trail cameras.
Yeah.
Dan just put a video up on the Hunting Beast yesterday. Little scouting video, essentially, Dan. And you kind of had an idea during the video about monitoring some bedding areas with a number of cameras. And that's kind of what we wanted to talk about this evening with everybody, and probably just trail cam strategies in general for the season. And we thought we'd start by talking about this experiment Dan's going to do this year with a bunch of Exodus trail cameras.
I was kind of looking at like I've got a unique situation in the swamp territory here where a lot of the bedding areas are set up in a way where there's one exit. So if the buck's there, he's coming out a certain way. If he's there, he's coming down a certain trail. And if that's the case, if you monitor that with a cell cam, you're going to watch him every time he comes through that gap. So I was just thinking it'd be a great opportunity to get some stats, and really see how things go, and we talk about overlooked spots, see how many times actually other hunters go into those spots. There's a whole host of things we can look at. How consistent your bed, how it impacts them when you go in there and you hunt, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really interesting because there's not so much in the last 6 months have I heard it, but probably last year, maybe the year before that, when cell cameras were really becoming the new norm, becoming really popular, hitting critical mass.
Mm-hmm.
Guys that were running cameras on bait, there was a claim where people felt like cell cameras spooked deer because of the RF. And I think this would be a good study to show whether it does or it doesn't. In my opinion, it doesn't. I have an explanation for that. But I think being a part of this study, I think that there'll be some good usable data even around that sense on that.
That's why it's kind of, if possible, I'd like to have either you or Cameron come out and help with that, because you've got your expertise in your cameras and you can help with the setups and stuff, and make sure that we're doing it in a certain way, and we can monitor that too, and talk about that on video. I think this whole thing's going to be a really great learning experience.
So Dan, like, how many cameras are you thinking about running during the year? However many Chad will bring up to you.
Maybe 6 or 7. I don't know.
And they're all going to be cell cameras?
Yeah, that would be the ticket. If it wasn't a cell cam, I'd have to leave it there for the whole year and not check it.
Right.
I'm not going to go back into those bedding area. I learned long ago that putting them right in bedding areas, which is what a lot of guys want to do. They want to put right over the beds. Deer just freak out about that. If you're just 75 yards back, you're still getting the picture of the deer. And if the deer bed's a little different one day, because generally they got a bunch of beds, you don't miss the footage, and stuff like that. On that exit, he's coming out. So I want to monitor the exits about 75 yards from the beds. And there's only certain bedding areas that'll work on. So, ones that got one good exit coming out, and usually ones that are backed up against something, near a road, near a river, that kind of stuff, or going down into cattails, they're coming up a point out. And then it's got to be ones that I know big bucks use. So it's going to be kind of interesting, see how many different bucks use that bedding area in a year, how consistent it is. That I talk about how in the past I've noticed 2-week time periods when they're really peak on bedding areas. See how consistent that is, because the cameras aren't going to lie. They're going to tell the truth, and see if we see different results in different bedding areas, which I'm sure we will.
Yeah. It'll also be interesting if you could prolong it to run the exact same cameras next year, as long as they're fruitful areas, and just to see how maybe crop rotation in a certain area may have changed something, or if you had a good acorn crop, or I don't know, just things like that would be interesting to note and see how that kind of stuff plays out. Also, we talked about this a little bit too, is be interesting to see what kind of pressure each camera gets as far as human pressure.
Right. We talk about how these are overlooked spots. Now, what is an overlooked spot? How many times do humans get in there? We know occasionally people get into every spot in the woods, but it'll be kind of interesting. I know, I ran a cell cam on a spot last year, and I had one hunter come in once, and I was actually kind of surprised about that in that spot. But that'll be interesting too. It is, coyotes might come through. And you can see what the impact of that is. Maybe they don't have as much impact as humans because they're always coming through. Maybe they do. It's going to be interesting.
There was an audible noise study done in Georgia last year, and the NDA released some of that. And we actually had this guy on our podcast, but the study was around noises from predators. So wolves, which aren't in Georgia, coyotes, humans, and I think there might have been, maybe it was a bobcat. Maybe the bobcat was the last one. And they had a bunch of different test sites. And the biggest negative impact on deer movement between all of those predators, and this was just purely audible. So it's just basically they had a camera there, and then they had some type of audio file playback at specific
a predator call or something. Yeah,
right, exactly. And the human voice had a bigger impact on every one of those test sites over coyotes or wolves or bobcats. Just really interesting.
I believe that.
Yeah, for sure.
You got any?
Go ahead, Dan. No, I was gonna say I don't know the numbers of deer that like coyotes and bobcats kill around here, but I can't imagine it's as many as hunters kill.
I've seen them hunt, not bobcats. We don't have much for bobcats around here, but I've seen coyotes hunt deer quite a few times. When I'm in the field, I've seen them circling deer, going after them, and I think they can be pretty consistent at that. However, I think the freaking coyotes find them no matter where they go.
Right.
I think that humans don't, so they can avoid the humans. I don't think they can avoid the coyotes as much. I think maybe they're used to them.
Yeah, I mean they live with them, essentially. At least they get a break from us for 70% of the year. Some states less than that, but I was we were before the podcast. We were sitting here just talking about life right now and how deer season's sneaking up on us. And I was thinking about going to Tennessee in that velvet season, and that's like a few weeks from now, or about a month from now, I guess. But I still got a whole bunch of stuff to do around here still. I got cameras I got to get out and everything else. I'm going to try to find a few places kind of like Dan's describing too, and compile that data maybe in hill country. I put out 2 cameras this weekend in hill country. They weren't cell cameras because I don't have cell service where I was at, but I'd like to include that in the data for sure. Just some like buck bedding points that go down into a hub and out to a kraut field eventually. And, found a couple nice scrapes down in there and put them over those scrapes. Dan, are you going to specifically like try to find scrapes outside of bedding or just intersecting trails, or is there any particular like way you're going to set up the cameras?
No, actually, finding those 2 spots with scrapes in that video was pretty rare.
Yeah.
Finding scrape beds is not an easy task. So no, I'm not going to target that. I am going to have cameras at those 2 spots, but most of the time I'm just going to be looking for bedding that I believe for whatever reason, be it sign or past history, that I know mature bucks are bedding there, or at least occasionally do, right? So that's what I'm going to target. And those 2 with the scrapes are kind of unique. You don't see that a lot. I've just had a lot of success when I have found that situation.
Yeah, for sure. James W. in the comments said I bet cars kill more deer than coyotes. Did they have like a horn beeping at them?
I don't think so, but that would have been funny.
I think coyotes kill a lot of fawns.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They
also kill deer in deep snow, and then they get a lot of the mature bucks that are run down from the rut.
There was a there was a trail camera. Chad, you probably have seen this. There was somebody put a trail camera over like a den for coyotes, and they counted like how many fawns they drug into that.
Oh, really?
Den? Yeah. And it was like a number that you never guessed had been that high. And it was just a astronomical amount of fawns that the female was pulling into her pups.
Wow.
Yeah. I'll try to find it.
Yeah, you'll have to send that to me.
For a while, there was a period of about 5-6 years where we never saw fawn on Dave's property.
Yeah.
All the does would be fawnless because there's so many coyotes.
Yeah, they're hard on the fawns, and we have a lot of coyotes anymore.
You have less and less people trapping, less and less people hunting them.
Yep.
I mean, outside like where we are, outside of a couple big week-long coyote contests, like there ain't very many people hunting them, and those things are
going to be a thing in the past eventually too. Like people get all kinds of upset about those.
Yep.
My dad and my uncles, they run coyote dogs, but they not like they used to. They don't do it as much as they used to anymore. And they've always done it after deer season, and they're a group of
picking up around here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's starting to like get to be the in thing with people. A lot of people are starting to call them, use infrared by those, high dollar scopes, and a lot of guys are running drones.
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta go grab a charger real quick. My laptop's dying here. I gotta
Go for it.
Rookie mistake, but I'll be back in 1 minute.
No problem. Yeah. I looked into buying, because we got down in the farm that I have, we got coyotes bad down there. And I looked into getting one of those like scopes, those infrared night scopes, and yeah, I don't know. Got a lot of money. Oh, a lot of money wrapped up into that stuff. I want to say they're like $5,000 or something like that. Maybe it wasn't that much, but it seemed like it was close. It was enough to where I was like, no, I'm not even going to think about it.
We almost had an exciting show tonight, because we had a great escape of Carol had some feral cats in the house here in a room, and they busted a window out. They busted out the screen and escaped, and we're trying to catch them, and she locked one of them in this room, and it kept trying to attack me like it was a mountain lion or something. And I thought I was going to have to spend some time in here with it, but she finally got it out of here.
That's funny. Did it break just the screen? It didn't break glass, did it?
No, she's got like one of those old fashioned accordion screens in there.
Oh yeah.
So I was tackling cats just before the podcast.
So what would you say, Dan? Like, I don't know if there's 5 or 6 things. Like, what all are you going to look at whenever whether it be moon or temperature, whatever? What all are you thinking about?
I'm going to try and look at everything I can. Anything that I can correlate a pattern on. And I'm sure I'm going to think of more stuff along the way. But we talked about a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to predict when I think the bedding areas are going to peak, based on what I like I always talk about being the detective and going into these bedding areas, and when you scout them and figuring out when you think deer are going to be there, rather than just hunting them randomly, right? So make some predictions about what's going to happen, and then see if I'm right or if I'm wrong on camera, and learn from the experience, right? So that kind of stuff. But there's a million things we can monitor.
Yeah.
And I think as the data comes in, we can start trying to, correlate that to things that went on. Would be it, how early they move on moon phases or something. If we get enough data, we can do that. There ain't a lot of big bucks around here, but I'm assuming we're going to get enough data to check some of that stuff. I'd also like to see, the difference between mature bucks and younger bucks, how they come out and stuff, based on amount of daylight, things like that.
I think the moon phase and transit times, so overhead underfoot, I think that would be really interesting to monitor.
Right.
I know that there's guys that believe in it and there's guys that don't believe in it. And I want to believe in it, because I think from what a lot of guys say, it gives you, or can give you, an advantage. And I just personally haven't seen any correlation, or even all of us here at the office, like going through data. But that doesn't mean it's not, because we're not running cameras in a manner for us to really be able to decipher that either. Where, if we're 75 yards from a bedding area with one exit, I think that data is probably a lot more accurate than having cameras scattered all over the big woods.
Correct. I have seen some correlation with moon phase, with the overhead underfoot thing. However, I've seen it very dramatically, at least based on what I've observed. And when I got into western Wisconsin and hill country, and in Iowa and hill country, where it was low pressure, I saw a lot of movement around it, overhead and underfoot. And I was particularly graphing it at the time, going on like 10-day hunts and graphing all my sightings to the moon and seeing correlations. Even if it was noon, I was seeing more deer than those times. But when I went back home and I hunted the swamps and the heavy pressure, I wasn't seeing it. But I think if it's real here, we should see a difference, at bedding areas, be it 15 minutes. 15 minutes is huge. You got to remember, a lot of the huge bucks that I shoot at bedding areas, like at the staging areas, coming out of bedding, 75 yards from their bed, I'm shooting them at closing time or close to it. So getting them to move 15 minutes earlier is huge. So that is a correlation that I really want to keep track of.
Yeah. Something else I think is going to be cool is like we can even talk about it on the podcast throughout the season, is like when we have cold front or some type of a weather front come through, just as that week, we can like maybe mention the deer that showed up on your trail cameras, or, if, 4 of the 6 of them had some type of a decent buck on it on some certain day or some certain weather pattern, or I don't know.
What's good about the cell cams is now you can't really go back in there too much with the regular cameras, right? So with the cell cam, you're getting day by day data, and you can watch the weather day to day, and you don't have to go back and go through all the past data and stuff. And then, there's going to be certain things you're going to get a little off or not remember quite right or something. Then, have to go just based on what the weather says, unless you do it day by day. I can watch it day by day and chart it every day, what's coming in on the phone. And then it's not overwhelming at the end of the year either. And it can it'd be fun to, talk about it on the videos. We can have, test site 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 or whatever, and talk about them week to week, as we do videos,
Yeah.
And then correlate it to the weather during the week. And then at the end of the season, really put all the data together and see where it went.
I've over the years tried to like correlate stuff with trail cameras, and I've never really done it with cell cams like we're doing right now or this year. And it seems like at the end of the year, you're just overloaded with data points, and it's just like you kind of give up on it because it's like I can't look through 20,000 pictures of
I'm always about trying to gain information from cameras.
Yeah,
that's always my thing. Hunting, I don't really care about the camera too much. To me, hunting's about choosing the right spot for the right reasons, but the data you get out of the cameras is always huge for me.
Yeah.
And the trouble with it is when you run one camera or something and you move it during the season and you do that, move it around, or you run 1 or 2, and then when you're done hunting, you pull your cameras, then you're not getting all that data. So do or die, whether I kill a deer or I don't kill a deer, my goal is to just run these the whole season and monitor them the whole season and get some data out of it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest mistakes people make with trail cameras is constantly checking them. The more you go in there, the more you mess around, the less accurate those data points become, or the less pure they become. So
actually, in a lot of cases, if people misuse trail cameras, they hurt them more than they help them. 100%. Especially with regular trail cams. If they're going in there checking them constantly, and they'll get 1 or 2 big bucks that don't follow the rules and will put up with the scent or whatever, and then they think they're doing everything right, but they're messing up all the other deer. And if that deer knows he's coming in there, he might be coming in when the cameras, everybody's going around and checking to see if the guy is there because he's used to the human scent. He's not catching that deer off guard.
Yeah. We so dating back to 2019, there's a guy in Northwest Pennsylvania that runs 100 plus cameras in that large piece of public there that you guys have hunted. And he's been collecting these data points, and we just had him in the office last month and went over all 2+ years of running 100 plus cameras, and he put everything in a spreadsheet, camera by camera. I mean, we haven't released the information yet, but it was crazy. And the long and short of it is, like, you're in Pennsylvania, there's guys in the woods, and there were year over year, there were a couple windows that were really, really good.
That'll be interesting to hear about.
My past using cameras, I've had things catch me off guard like you don't expect. Like I had one spot that I really thought was a good early season spot, and over the years it had a lot of action there. And then I ran a camera there for the whole year for a couple of years. It was at Dave's place, and I started noticing that when I thought it was hot for opening, the opening couple of weeks, in the first 2 years there wasn't a big buck there once. They didn't show up until October, and then when I went back and looked at my kills, my kills were in October. It was just in my head. But watching the cameras, those deer did not show up in that spot until that first and second week of October, and they're gone by rut. There's that 2-week period they were there. And without those cameras, I'd still be chasing that, trying to figure it out. But the camera gave me such a window that you saw every deer for 2 years that went in there. And it was purely random outside of that 2 weeks, 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I used I have a particular spot that if you would set there on like November 3rd and 4th, you probably kill a nice deer every year. It's like every year at this area, there's a nice one that strolls through. It's just a little point that goes out into a cornfield, but it's like clockwork every year. It just never worked out to where I've been sitting there on the 3rd and 4th, but Stuart here, he said that you can pull historical weather from past years from Weather Underground and import it into an Excel file. I didn't know you could import them to Excel file. I knew you could go back in the history, but that'd be pretty useful if you're doing this kind of thing. I don't know if Gary's still on. I saw him earlier on here, but he did a pretty good study last year, and we kind of narrowed down. He had quite a few trail cameras in Indiana. I think he included his Wisconsin ones, but there was a couple of days where he had a pretty large number of bucks on that. He just did bucks in general, not necessarily mature bucks, but on a particular day. I can't remember. It coincided with some weather differences and, a time frame, but I cannot remember that. I'd have to ask him what it was, but it was real interesting to see. Yeah. Chad, how many cameras do you have out right now?
Not very many. I would say 20, somewhere between 20 and 25, probably.
That's probably, depending who you ask, not very many.
Yeah, I mean, most of those are left over from
last
few years. Yeah. I mean, there's spots that will run cameras 24/7, 365.
Yeah, it was interesting when I hunted with you. You had cameras. We went to you said, "Oh, I haven't been here in over a year," and the camera's still running. And you had the solar power on there, and that just that runs and runs and runs, eh?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you get them set up right, there's one cell camera that's been running for 3+ years. I mean, it was one of the very first cell cameras off of production we have down there, and it's still chugging along. But then you have other cameras. I mean, there's so many variables with signal strength and upload frequencies. I mean, we have other cameras that you put out in 3 months and they're totally toast on the same system. So, yeah.
November 3rd is when Gary said he had the most bucks on camera. It was a bunch of cameras. I mean, maybe 20 or 30. But anyway, here's a pretty good question while we're talking about trail cameras here. Any advantages of putting cameras up high besides keeping people honest?
Well, high is relative, right?
Right.
We practice this theory that we call like the spook proof equation. So all of our cameras, unless we're worried about theft, they're somewhere between like 6 and 8 feet. I don't like to put cameras up any higher than that because you're actually limiting what the camera can do. If you get a camera up, let's say 10 or 12 feet, and it's angled down on a 45, like on a 1-to-1, you just left a 12-foot gap underneath that camera. And also the detection and everything, the detection area and circuit. Yeah, you're monitoring a spot. So it becomes a static, what we call a static environment. So you're monitoring a spot, which is great if you're on a scrape or if maybe you're on a feeder or bait station, mineral pile, whatever. There's places where it's conducive. But I think more often than not, hanging them up, 10 plus feet, I think most of the time guys are hurting themselves. But I understand it because they don't want their stuff stolen. If people can't see it, they can't steal it. So
one problem I've seen with that is it makes the deer antlers look really small.
Yeah.
The tine height, they start looking like they're small racked.
Yeah.
I've been shocked when I see how big a buck is after I seen it from the air and thought it was smaller.
Yeah, not only tines, but just body features. It's like my wife always complains if I'm taking a picture of her on a phone and the phone's not angled a certain way. She's like, "You're making me look big. You need to angle the phone." It's like the same. It's the same thing. Photography tricks.
If you're like monitoring just a scrape or something, though, it's not a huge deal to have them up in the air.
I did something on that in marsh bucks when I released that video way back in the 90s. And everybody said I was nuts. Now everybody's hanging them high.
Yeah, a lot of people do. I've gotten them stolen up high too, though. Someone asked,
feeling that they're going to get it, even if you have
shimmy up the tree.
What cell cams too is I think people are a little leery of stealing a cell cam because they don't know if you're going to come running or whatever. I remember that last challenge we were on, Indiana, I think it was. We went in to scout one little area, and I ran into a cell cam. I looked at it, and then I went walking away, and I walked out to the road, and some guy come flying up on a dirt bike, flying in the woods up to the cell cam, like looking around, scaring everything out of the woods because he was so worried we were stealing a cell cam because he got a picture of us,
Yeah. I got one stolen last year, and the guy didn't turn it off, and got pictures of him in his truck and everything else.
You ended up getting that back, didn't you?
Yeah, I got it back. Not very smart, but kind of funny. Someone asked Chad, "Are you and Clint going back to Kansas this year?"
No, nope. I drew an Iowa tag, and then I have an Idaho elk tag, and then with Ohio, that'll be it. That'll be it for the year. Just 3 tags. I was spread a little thin last year, man. We were all over the place with you guys. 2 trips to Wisconsin, Ohio, Kansas, Idaho. So no, just 3 tags this year.
Yeah. That's still a busy year. Okay, Chad, there's an arrow question that you can probably speak on a little bit here. He says, Chad, I shoot 3D, but I'm in elite hunter division, so I don't use those super thick arrows. Are your arrows the straightness 0.001?
No, so the builds are 0.006, so they're 6,000 straightness tolerance, and we've done some testing on this as well. So out of a hooter shooter, so like a shooting machine, you set a shooting machine up and you take every human variable out of it. You're not torquing your bow, you're not yanking a bad shot, you're not punching a trigger. And the grouping difference between a 0.001 arrow and a 0.006 arrow is not very much. I mean, Josh, you and I have talked about this kind of off air, but there's only a handful of shooters, maybe 50 guys, maybe 100 guys in the world that can execute a shot consistently enough to shoot a better group with a 0.001 tolerance versus a 6. And honestly, a lot of the times, this was like a big shocker to me when we were doing all this research. A lot of times manufacturers will do a production run, and then when they go through their process of measuring tolerances, they'll just batch like a 0.001 arrow tolerance and then they'll batch like a 0.003 and a 0.006. It's just, you're buying the same damn arrow shaft, but because one has a better straightness tolerance, it justifies a higher price. And then the other, again, I'm not a target shooter. I'm a hunter. And I think that with what we plan to offer, I don't know that we'll ever get into the target world. That's just not who we are. So like for me, like part of going into a different product category is being curious or trying to solve a problem for myself. That's kind of what motivates me to learn different things. But the other thing is like the difference between 0.001 and 0.006 is you're talking like human hair. I mean, Dan, you work in a machine shop, like, 5 thou. It's not very much.
Not very much.
And also, when you think about when is your arrow ever straight? Only at rest.
Mm-hmm. It's not when you release it. Not at all. If you slow down video and you watch it, it really, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
I don't think 5 thousandths is much at all. I'm sure it makes a difference, but the difference is probably so minute that it ain't even going to show up in a pattern of a normal bow shooting.
And that's what we found just using that high-speed camera and the Hooter shooter. When you got out the longer distances, 80, 90, 100 yards, there was some difference. But even like shooting offhand, like I'm not a good enough shot to be able to make a significant difference between the tolerances.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to a confidence thing. Like I was the guy before I knew this stuff. I was a guy that would go spend more money, whether it's $40 or $50 a dozen, on a straighter arrow. Because in my mind, it's like, why do I want my arrow? A 0.001? It's got to be better than 0.006. So not knowing anything, I would just spend my money because it was a confidence thing. So I think the best thing for anybody, whether you're archery, hunting, just tinker and find something that works for you. Just tinker. Be inquisitive. Think with a critical mind and think through things. Don't just digest what you're hearing,
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said earlier, me and you had I guess we were texting back and forth about the straightness. Is because I have a buddy that lives next door or down the road, I guess. He shoots ASA and like he's in shoot offs, which some of the stuff you guys may not know what it is, but like Levi Morgan and Dan McCarthy, he shoots with those guys and, competes with those guys. So, Chad's talking about like the top 50 shooters in the world. He's probably right there. And I was at his house shooting the arrows, and we got talking about the straightness. I didn't have any issues with them at all, but then he was just explaining to me like, he's like, guys like that, they'll be able to tell a difference. But like to Chad's point, I couldn't. But this guy also was like having me shoot out at 80 yards. And he's like, all right, group at 80. I'm like, this isn't going to tell us nothing, dude. Like, I missed the block once. I had one on the left side, one on the right. But, he could put it in a softball at 80 every single time. So that was his, his thinking.
You go back to the 80s and the aluminum arrows, we used to spin them. And if they had a wobble to them, we'd look at where the wobble goes down. And we bend them on our knee a little bit till they spun through. I mean, those things were probably out 10 or 15, and they still killed a lot of deer with them.
Yep.
Chad, you guys have done a lot of research on arrows the last year or however long it's been since you started this journey with arrows. Buck Slayer here, he asked about, he's asking, I think it's more of the chat, but I think it's a good conversation about what fixed blade heads we're shooting. And I think everybody kind of knows what me and Dan shoot. We shoot the G5 stuff, but have you like done much research on shooting single bevel, heavy heads, whatever, cut on contact, heavy heads out of compounds?
Yeah, we just did this a couple weeks ago into some ballistic gel, and not necessarily heavy heads, but more of a standard 100 grain all the way across the board type test. But there were some single bevels involved, all cut on contact, fixed blade heads, ranging anywhere from a broadhead like tooth of the arrow, which is like a machined one piece 4-blade, only an inch cutting diameter, something really, really small. It's not very long, it's short, compact, to like the iron will vented inch and an eighth or inch and a quarter head. That's like, I don't know, they're really expensive.
Yeah.
Made out of tool steel.
I think they're like $109 for 3 of them or something like that.
Yeah. So we've done a bunch of different testing, but when it comes to, in my opinion, from my my research, mass is mass. Momentum comes from mass. So whether you have, a 500 grain arrow and 300 of it's up front, or a 500 grain arrow with 100 up front, you still have the same amount of mass. But what I would say is, I think that there's more value in having, if you're going to add mass up front through like inserts or a collar, in my opinion, you're probably better off leaving that weight in the broadhead, so your broadhead has more structural integrity, versus putting a 200 grain outsert or insert up front and then putting a 100 grain broadhead. Now, I know not all the heads have options. 100, 125 is pretty standard. But in my opinion, if I was going to shoot a high FOC build, I would have my weight in the broadhead, not in the collars, personally.
Yeah, my biggest problem with all that, I'm not going to call it a fad, but like the concept is, I think it gives people way too much confidence in being able to shoot through a shoulder or take some real hard quartering shot. It's like the way that stuff is presented to people is a little bit misleading to me. It's like, yeah, that's all fine and dandy and great, but like you still need to think about the animal and what you're actually trying to do. Because, I've hit a couple shoulder blades and not got through them with what I would consider a heavier setup. And it was honestly,
I don't know if you saw that argument I had with somebody on the line not too long ago, but the person was telling me that he shoots them all in the shoulder, shoots right through their shoulders. And I'm like, probably not a good idea with any arrow.
Yeah.
Have to aim for that spot,
Yeah. And I mean, there's no question it can be done and all that, but it's like sometimes it isn't done, like it all works until it doesn't. And
there's differences in deer too. I mean, you look at the deer that I shot last year, it was like 240, 250 dressed. That thing had shoulders on it. Like just getting through the shoulder without a shoulder blade would have been tough. It's not apples to apples if you're shooting a 90-pound doe versus a mature buck. It's great to have that FOC and get through that deer, but don't count on it. I mean, you still got to have good arrow placement.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing is just to know your setup, know its capabilities, and like what Josh said, at times being patient and waiting for the right shot angle is a hell of a lot better than spending the next day tracking a deer or having to call a dog and having those sleepless nights. Like, and we've all, like, I've done it. We've all done it. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm a horrible shot, but because of that, and because I know that, I have to be more careful about waiting for the right opportunity.
Right.
Someone asked, how's Dan coming along with buying Dave's partial?
No, I don't think it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the best time, especially to be buying land
going on right now.
Yeah.
And so they kind of got it where they want to sell it to a friend of the family's. And now that friend of the family's having money problems, maybe I could slide in there, but probably tick some people off. And right now, money's getting tight with the economy. So I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah, your gas bill went up a whole bunch. I bet you drive quite a ways to work every day. So
the good news is it looks like I'll be able to hunt it again this season, because they're waiting for this person to build some money up. And I'm pretty confident if that person does buy it, they're going to allow me to hunt there.
Yeah, that's good. I got some decent news from my my CRP field. I was at a 4th of July party, and so there's the farmers are a son and a father, and the father's probably 70 and the son's late 30s, 40, something like that. And the father was there, and he was talking to me about he's wanting me to trap coons because they got coon problem. And he was saying, yeah, did Matt tell you that he's going to put that those crops or that CRP potentially in crop? And I said, yeah, he told me. He goes, I think it's a bad idea. I'm going to try to talk him out of it. So maybe his dad will keep talking to him and get him to not take it out of the CRP rotation. But here's a question we can give some people some tips for. Chad, I think you have a pretty good solution to this problem. When you have a setup on large trees and your straps are too short, how do you make it work?
For cameras? For truck cameras?
No, I think he's talking about for a tree stand. We'll do both. I don't know which one he's talking about, but
yeah, I mean, it's the same answer for me, I guess. On the camera side, we use paracord. We ditch the straps even right out of the box. I don't use trail camera straps at all anymore. And then like for sticks, climbing sticks, like when we were in Kansas, man, some of those giant cottonwoods,
yeah,
just they were tough. I mean, it was a challenge. But on my sticks, I have an 8-foot rope mod, and then I use like a I don't know what the knot is. You just loop it back
hitch,
down. Yeah, and basically a simple hitch. And I've been doing that for it's been, how long have the 24-inch originals been out, Dan? Has it been 3 years or 4 years?
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
So mine are at least 3 years old, and I did that pretty quick with them. Even the XOP sticks and stuff I was using before we ran those rope mods, and I personally really like them. I mean, you get a little bit of slip when you go to set the stick, but not a ton. But that's what I do in the bigger trees.
So you can use a double strap too. You can loop a strap around inside of itself and have 2 straps as one. For the Lone Wolf Company, that one out of Illinois, before they were put out of business by someone, they sold just loop straps that were shorter to give you an extension for the bigger trees. And that extension was perfect because it didn't have a buckle on it, and then you could get
light,
around just any tree you could reach around. So those were nice. I'm not into the rope mods. I don't like the slipping personally. I know a lot of people use them though.
I always carry something similar to what you're talking about, Dan. It's just a extra strap essentially, and I'll wrap it around. I use my belt one. I got
usually you only need one. Usually it's only the bottom stick that you got to get around that big diameter part of the tree.
Yeah.
Another thing I do too is with the ones that are just barely there, is if you turn the stick sideways, you can get it on, and then you pull it around and get it,
super tight then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It happens sometimes. Sometimes it's your only option. Sometimes trees are small, sometimes they're big.
And most of the time, most of the trees that I'm hunting in are smaller. It's not too often I get in a real big tree, but it happens.
Here in Indiana, you can get some pretty big ones. Okay, this is a pretty good question that we can kind of go around the horn on here. That's it could be trail cam related too. Can you guys discuss how you're planning your first weeks of sits? You plan ahead to hunt a specific buck or bedding areas, or do you just wait till season's a little bit closer to decide?
I know my answer is going to be different than Chad's because Chad's traveling. For me, my first sits around my place are determined the day before I'm hunting. I'm looking at the wind and stuff, but it's going to be determined by the wind. It's going to be determined by sightings. It's going to be determined by sign. It's going to be determined by past events, past scouting. So I'm just basically going to put myself in the best option for that day. And there's a lot of factors that can go into that. I mean, hopefully I've been watching a buck through the summer and I'm moving in on that buck. If not, I'm going in on something past knowledge, of some buck, right? So how about you, Chad?
Well, it's going to be around
related. You've probably seen them on camera.
In Ohio, yes. I mean, we were in Iowa in the unit that we applied for and drew in the spring and did some scouting and hung some cameras. We haven't been back to check them, but I'm going to say the plan to hunt that is to make a trip the first cold front after probably October 15th. And only reason I say October 15th is because I'm just getting back from Idaho the 1st or 2nd of October. So I got to kind of get caught up on my homework a little bit. But that entire area, we'll go in and check cameras and scout, but there's a really, really good glassing point there, which I know sounds weird because a lot of guys aren't glassing deer in the Midwest. But the way this public lays out, it's basically a river corridor, and off to the one side, it's just not like bluffs, just basically follow that. And then there's all ag and CRP and stuff in the bottom. So that was the very first thing that Cameron and I looked at was, okay, let's knock on some doors and figure out where we can get up on this bluff system. Even if we're on somebody's front porch or up on a house, it doesn't matter to us. We just need to be able to get up and get a visual advantage and be able to get up there in the evenings and mornings and lay eyes on something and then make a plan.
Yeah. I'll typically like get super aggressive the first 2 days of season. I'll have a deer picked out that I want to hunt that I think is accessible. By October 1st is when our opener is. And I've had pretty good luck getting on deer quick like that. And I'm talking about, hunting real close to bedding and all that kind of stuff. And then if I don't kill something the first couple of weeks, we usually don't, or first couple of days, I usually don't, I'll set back and do some observation sits and then try to make a move on a deer from there. Or if I get some different intel from cameras, I'll also do that. Like I run a lot of cell cameras. So that helps making decisions. But it's not always like the deciding factor for me. It's a deciding factor if it's some good intel. But I also have a whole bunch of regular SD card cameras that I'll go check in like September at some point in time. And just because here in the hills, we don't get service in a lot of areas. And I'll also make some decisions on those the first week of season. But dude, like the first week of season is my favorite time to hunt deer around here. Like you got all this anticipation from not being able to hunt all summer, since last deer season. And I've just had some really good hunts early season that, and I always just look forward to it. But man, I don't ever like my plans will change sometimes driving out to the spot. I don't put many hunts in stone. It's all just kind of one of those deals where it's like a feeling, like a lot of times just a feeling. Like I just have sometimes you got a sense that, hey, I need to be in this spot this evening, early season. So, yeah. Hey, Chad, what are those grains per inch on your arrows?
9.0 on the 350s, and then the 300s are 9.8. So they're not light by any means. I know a lot of people, when we start putting content out and saying, not that we were anti-FOC, but like we are kind of anti-FOC. So a lot of people took the assumption that like we were, because we talked so much about velocity deprivation, that everybody thought we were going to have something light and fast. And they're not really that light. It's a moderate. I would consider it a moderate build. Like most guys, like Dan's setup is over 500 grains with a 100 grain broadhead. Maybe like 515 or something. I'm just barely under 500 with my setup. So they're not light by any means.
Right. And you got that insert in the front. So that's, Dan, are you guys going to produce any more 24-inch beast sticks? Someone asked that.
I don't think so. I think we're done with them. I think it's just going to be the shorts from now on. And actually, when I first built sticks, my concept and my idea was probably what these guys that like the long ones were thinking, was that I wanted to get as high as I could with a stride length of, with maximum stride length, so I could minimize weight for per height, basically. It's kind of a calculation, right? But Mario really wanted to create a stick that fit within the Tree Stand Mafia's rule book, so that they could be, store legal at some point, right? So that meant we could only go to on the shorter stick to the 20 inches, right? Per what we could have from step to step distance. So I built them for him, and I'm the kind of guy who, if you prove me wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, some guys can never admit being wrong, but when I tried those sticks out, I fell in love with them. The short sticks are much better than the long sticks, I believe, all the way around. And you have to try them to see that. The difference in height is 4 inches each. And it really doesn't show up in a tree, because you're usually getting around knots and sticks and stuff like that. And really the height difference at max height from 4 to 6 of each is nothing. I mean, it's like a foot if you had a perfectly straight limbless tree, which is usually not the case. It really is minimal. And then you have that smaller package you can fit on your stand. It fits between limbs on trees better. It's just an all-around better stick. And I think a little bit lighter, like you alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
I just think it's a better stick, and I think we're going to go that route, rather than blowing smoke up people's butts and trying to get them to buy both.
Yep. I've gotten asked that question a few times in Facebook messengers and stuff, and I thought it'd be good to mention it on here. Here's something we could talk about, because it's pretty popular thing to do anymore. Do you guys make your own mock scrapes and monitor them with cameras? You have a favorite forehead scent? I don't. I don't know if anybody has it. Have you guys had any luck with that, Chad?
We do make our own mock scrapes, and we've had a lot of success with it. I'm not a big scent person. Even when we're making mock scrapes, like I'm not putting pre-orbital or any of the urine or anything, basically nothing in them, but I'm putting them in a spot where, like in the big woods, at an intersection of trails, or I'm putting it in a deer's face, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not just going out to a spot where I think I can have a perfect setup with a west wind and just putting a scrape out in the middle of the timber. I'm putting it in their face, and then I'll monitor it with a camera with no sense. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's a vine. Sometimes that's a beech branch. I try to be as natural as possible, but we do like the vines. They're really easy to tie up with, easy to carry, pick up, easy to tie up with a piece of paracord.
Dan, you got anything?
Yeah, I don't really care for them too much. I think if I was using it for monitoring with a trail camera, like to get inventory or something, I think they work real well, but not my cup of tea. I think I can get that inventory in other ways, like camera over food and stuff like that. And
yeah,
I just don't like messing with them, messing with scent and stuff. I like doing it the natural way. And some of that, I'm not saying it's wrong or it's bad or anything like that. It feels kind of weird, kind of.
Yeah.
It's just like I like hunting deer, not using gimmicks. It's just
right.
Me. It's not about trickery. It's about catching that deer on his own terms, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I actually did a little bit of experimenting this week with I made a couple in the hills here in Indiana. I'll do it in Indiana, like up in the hills, where sometimes it's hard to like find a real defined trail or something like that to put a camera on to get inventory. So I'll throw up a mock scrape. I don't typically put like a vine or anything. It's like more of a natural, like underneath a beech tree or something, where or a lot of times it'll be like a traditional area where they have scraped in the past. But anyway, I did get some certain type of scent and try it this year to see, and left one unscented or whatever you want to say, just to see if it makes a difference, or if I feel like it helped any or not helped any. But the verdict is all out on that stuff. But a lot of people use them. A lot of people have success with them.
My thing is, I don't know that you're actually pulling deer to that scrape. I think I think if they come through that wood lot and you've got a scrape there, they're going to move to the scrape. So you're going to get more pictures there. So, I mean, if your goal is to see what's moving through the area, I think that's great. But I don't think a deer is, walking out of his way through, half of the forest to get there. But if he comes through that section, he's going to go to that spot and you can get a picture. I think that's where you benefit. I don't think it's not like a bait pile. You're not pulling him in from a distance and he's camping out next to it because of it. You're just getting a picture when he comes through. Would you agree with that, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, that lines up, like I said, when we put these things out, we're doing it in the face of where the deer are. We're not just putting them out into a spot.
Yeah, you're not going to pull them to that
spot to get them over there. No, So I agree with that.
Yeah, and that's the purpose that I put them up to. I just trying to essentially get them to pose for the camera for me. Okay, we got a call in here. Hopefully Adam's ready. He was ready. There he is.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Hey, man, how's it going?
What's up? I'm dealing with a 4-year-old that needs to go to bed, but
that's all right.
So, question kind of about them mock scrapes too. So, I hate asking this question because I know if you guys had $1 for every time somebody asked you something and you said, every deer's different personality-wise, but so let's say you get a target buck on camera during the summer. Come October, whatever, the beans harden up, the agriculture hardens up, mass crop falls, whatever. And that deer disappears. On average, now I know every deer is different, but on average, how far are you guys seeing these deer go? Are you seeing them go, 100 miles? Are you seeing them go a half a mile? Or are you seeing them go, and I'm talking, Josh, you know how it is. I'm talking habitat where there's agriculture fields and beds and rolling hills and so it's not like the deer doesn't have what it needs. I'm just kind of curious of kind of what to expect there, if that makes sense.
I think it's kind of terrain specific, like different areas it's different. For me, around my area, the deer I see around here, I've seen them go as far as 5 miles and I'm seeing them never leave. One thing I have noticed is that the older deer, I mean, when they get to be like 6 or older, maybe 5 and older, they tend to be more homebodies where they just stay kind of locked in. But that's not always the case. Like you alluded to, every deer is different. But I think the younger bucks are more likely to move around in vast areas. I think big ones start keying in on the safest areas as they get older and get more tight-knit with certain areas. What do you think, Chad? I mean, you're hunting a whole different area than I am.
I mean, we've seen the whole gambit of spectrums as far as deer breaking up when they go hard horn or relocating even towards like the end of May, beginning of June, and then they're gone for the summer, and then all of a sudden they're back, September 27th or whatever. We've seen it. We've kind of seen every spectrum of that. We've seen deer disappear and then be back in that area for the rut, and they're only there for 2 weeks or 10 days, and then they're gone again. And then, like to Dan's point, we have deer that we've had on camera for 3-4 consecutive years, and then they're there all year round. Like they're in the clear cuts in the summer eating. Maybe they transition over to like one ridge, which is the way the crow flies could be just a few hundred yards, and then they're in the timber eating acorns and greenbriers. When those clear cuts start to dry up. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a like the average is 3 miles.
It's pretty open.
I can say I've killed a lot of deer that I've located in July and in August. So I mean, a lot of my big bucks have come from that time frame, locating them, and I shoot them near where I found them.
Yeah, and what? I know there's multiple people that tell you, and I know I've heard it from you, Dan, and like don't put a camera in a bedding area, or don't, We went for broke on this little area, and it's paid off so far, camera wise, and we have some real good intel. And I'm just curious as far as, this is, I don't know, probably the first week we've gotten pictures of this buck. And so I'm kind of anticipating him disappearing. Hey, please stop. And kind of anticipating, is this deer the beans get hard, or is he going to go 50 miles, 100 miles, you know what I mean? And it's kind of, I know it's an open-ended question, but that's kind of where I'm at. But
well, I would just you have to assume he's there and go for him. What else are you gonna do?
right.
So I'd look at acorns and stuff like that. He might disappear and still be there right underneath your nose.
Right.
You just kind of move to acorns or something that got a little more nocturnal, and just be on a different pattern because the beans dried up. You just got to look around and spread out until you find them.
Yep.
You got any experience with that, Josh?
Man, I don't think like a mature deer, I don't think he goes that far sometimes. I think sometimes, like if you bump him or something, he just gets smart to you, or figures out a way to live there knowing that you're in the area. I killed a deer in 2018, probably. I don't know. I'm bad with years, but I spooked him. He was at 10 yards. I was using a recurve bow, and when I pulled back, he froze behind a tree, and I couldn't hold my bow long enough to let him, step out. And I ended up finding him again a couple weeks later, probably 2 miles down the road, and ended up killing him. But I mean, it was during the rut, so he could have been just over there because he was chasing a doe or something too.
So if a buck like that leaves, like you said, you found him 2 miles, is that by, or is that by trail camera? Is that, I mean, how do you go getting back on a deer? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I found him in a pick cornfield, standing out with the doe, glassed him. Found him that way, but I mean, you could have found him with a trail camera, if you happen to have one in that area. Right. I just got lucky and happened to be able to hunt the. This happened on public where I, screwed him up, and then he ended up being down on a farm I could hunt. So, yeah.
Adam, do you have historical data on this one specific deer that we're talking about, or is this the first year you've had? About it?
Me and this buck go back like 4 days, so you can. No, okay. Yeah. So we went out scouting. It was around 4th of July, somewhere in there, and we literally went to an area. We were on our hands and knees crawling in these little, what I call them, they look like coyote tunnels, and I found beds. I mean, multiple beds everywhere, not together, but like one bed over here, and then you crawl 40, 50 yards, and then one bed over here. It was like the extreme of the extreme, but I wanted to go in one time and just look and just see, and if there wasn't anything in there, so be it. And we found all these beds, and I'm like, you know what? We're in here. Let's put a camera up, and kind of that's where we're at.
So is there multiple bucks with this buck, or is he alone?
He's alone.
I think he's more likely to stay if he's alone. It's when the bachelor groups disperse, I think those bucks move off more often.
Yeah, so it's without giving too much information. It's not an oxbow, but it's on the edge of the water. So he is on it's a thicket that runs right in the side of water. So my thinking is he's bedding with the water to his back, or vice versa, whatever, and having the wind come over. Because there's nothing that can. There's only essentially 2 or 3 ways that something could get to him. And I'm already in my head, like, laying there of an evening, looking at the map, thinking, how would I hunt this? Because you're not gonna crawl in there to him. I mean, that's why he's in there. So I'm trying to dot all my I's and cross all my T's and see what your guys' take on it was. But
I would take a look at more bedding areas than that and not put all your eggs in that one basket. I think he's probably living in that area, and I would want to learn the whole area around there, and I'd want to know all the spots he could be bedding. And I'd want, I don't know that I'd be in there invading him right now.
Right.
But I'd be making a game plan to hunt the area down, and start off right off the bat before, he does move or something, if he does. But if he's alone, I think he's less likely to move. You know, the bachelor groups, when they break up, I see those bucks move more often. Like one will stay in the area and the other ones will kind of leave. I mean, they're around somewhere, but
Right.
they move a distance.
So it's July 14th. As far as like a big buck still in velvet, what kind of thick stuff, I guess, what kind of stem count are you finding these deer in? You know, are their antlers still soft enough where they don't want to bang them on like a high stem count area? Or is it kind of that transition period where they're kind of hardening up and they, you know, kind of going in thicker stuff, I guess?
I don't know. I this time of the year, I'd put them on the edge of thick. I don't know if it has to do with bumping their antlers or not, but they're not in as deep. They bed more like the does do, more at the edge.
I got you. Yeah, I
don't know. I got some of them coming out of pretty thick stuff too, though. So
yeah,
I don't know that it has a big effect on them. You know.
Right. But yeah, I mean, you're 100% right when you said don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's what I needed to hear, because that's kind of what I've been picking this area apart, trying to think, you know, if we set up here with this kind of wind, you know, and that kind of goes back to the question I asked, you know, I know there's not a definite answer. I would feel a lot better if somebody's like, oh, he's only going to go half a mile. But, you know, that's kind of where I'm at.
Dan, what would your opinion be on this strategy? So this is a new area for Adam, a new buck. What if he went in with two guys, bumped that deer out of his bed, and visually watched where that deer went to maybe key in on his like second bedding area? Or do you think that's a no-no?
I think the last thing you want to do is tell that deer he's being hunted. If it's a mature buck, they get very hard to kill as soon as they know the game's on.
Yeah, I mean right now, like in the middle
I see.
the middle of summer.
I think his bed's probably going to change, which is part of the reason I was telling him not to put all his eggs in the basket. So I really wouldn't want to kick him out of the area. I'd probably just try to monitor him. I'd probably want to set up some trail cams, you know, around the area, and especially if you got cell cams, drop them into areas around the woods. If you got oak flats that are going to have acorns this year, you might want to put those cameras in there now. At areas where deer traditionally come out, you'll see the old trails, the old sign, the historical rubs, funnels and stuff, and try to monitor what that buck's doing back there. Glass them, watch them. I try to, you know, like right now, I'm putting out a wide net. I'm going out glassing and I'm putting miles on. I'm going to all the public spots and I'm finding bucks and I'm building up an inventory. And some areas I'm not going to find something. Some areas I am. Some areas, you know, the bucks, okay, you know, and then I'll find some real big bucks. And those bucks I'm going to keep tabs on. I'm going to watch them. And I'm going to start fine tuning that, you know, as we get into, you know, late August and then July and then into August. I'm going to start narrowing that search to where those bigger bucks are and really watching those fields, watching all the way around, going in, maybe even doing some observation sits and really trying to, without that buck knowing I'm watching him, try to just keep tabs on him, you know, from a distance. That doesn't mean pester the hell out of him. It means just get a look, you know, back out. Okay, here's where he's coming, you know, now, and see how he's shifting around. And just keep tabs on the ones you want to kill. The thing you got to remember too is that, you know, the buck you're describing, I'm on 10 of those a year, and I'm hunting spots like you're talking about your spot every time I hunt. And it might look like I'm very successful because I kill a lot of bucks over the years, but I'm hunting every day of the season. And how many deer am I killing? So, I mean, I might go into 10 spots or 20 spots like that before I actually get an opportunity. So you really got to look at the bigger picture of the forest there, because that buck's probably going to shift around. He might be right where you think he is. He might be right there opening day. I've had that happen. Mm-hmm. But that ain't always the case. You got to be broader and better prepared, I think.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, the way you describe it there. So you would kind of see if you can find entry and exit routes, put cameras on them, and move on, try to find different deer. Is that right?
I think you don't want to get so obsessed with this that you keep pestering over there trying to figure out a kill tree or something like that, and then you get that deer to bug out, right? Then you'll get your wish, what you asked for. He's going to move 5 miles, right? So, I mean, if you have the opportunity to drop a couple cameras on the side of that where you think his exits are, I wouldn't worry about his entrances. Worry about how he exits in the evening. Drop a trail camera in those spots. Watch it from a distance. Have that trail camera sending you, emails, and then you start looking outside of there and just let the cameras do the work. Just leave them alone. Let those cameras do the work, and go find, where else could he be? What else could he be doing? What other bedding areas is he using? Where is he going to be feeding? What's going on in that woods that's going to, change? Is he going to shift over to corn? Is he going to shift to acorns? What's he going to do different? And just try to read that woods and that terrain and the bedding and.
Right. And Josh, I'm sure you got people lined up wanting to call in too. I apologize. I got another question for Chad, but it can wait. I mean, I can ask next week.
Go ahead. We can take another. We got one more behind you, but that's good. We're good. Go ahead.
Okay. So, Chad, I listened to a guy the other day talk about. Of course, everybody's got cell cams now, but there's some spots on public I won't run a cell cam because you're just asking to be stolen, and so you go get a Walmart camera. But I heard a guy talk about running his trail cameras at night. Have you ever heard anybody had any experience with that, or had because like you're saying, Dan, if that big buck's in his bed and then he's middle of the night, he's gone out of that bed, and you go in and check that camera, you're not really bumping him. So I didn't know if that's the first time I'd heard of it, and I thought maybe it sounded a little crazy, but
what was it again? Him going out at night to put trail cameras out?
Just that to mainly check them.
Oh,
Pull the cars.
I don't know of anybody that does that as like normal practice. I do know one or two guys that do that because of their work schedule.
Right. Yeah.
So they'll get up early in the morning, so they're not missing family time evenings, and then they'll do all their trail camera work, card pulls, put cameras out between 4 a.m. to sunup or whatever the case is, and they'll check them in the same manner.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know where the deer are at night and they're not there in front of the cameras. I mean, if you're certain you know where they are, then I don't see a problem with it. I've never done that myself.
Yeah. The problem I have with that is that I think they're less scared of you than they are your scent.
Yeah,
I think the scent you're getting in there at night is going to do the damage.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. The deer don't care if you're there in the morning or daylight or night. It's like it's still scent.
If you get a cell cam and you lock it, most people don't want to steal a cell cam because they're on camera and you got the picture of them. They usually leave cell cams alone. And then if you lock the thing, you're going to think of, they come in there and mess with it. You're getting pictures of them, and then they're, but I mean, if it's a forwarded thing or whatever, and I get that, I probably wouldn't even use a camera if it was going to be a regular camera. You're going to be too tempted to go in there and check the damn thing, and it's going to cause more damage than good. I think. If you're using regular cameras, put them out in the feeding areas, put them in the oak trees, put them in the funnels, and monitor where that deer is going at night. But don't put them by the bedding areas. If you're going to put it by the bedding area, invest in a cell cam. And then two, that buck's there because people don't go over there. So you're not going to get very many people in those areas.
Right. I have a theory that if I get enough Tasco cameras stolen, that my wife will feel sorry for me and I can buy some.
There you go, man. Hey, man, I was going to give you a shirt for calling in tonight.
Hey,
so shoot me a message. I'll get this shipped to you. So,
sounds good.
Thanks, man.
I got put to bed, so I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Adam.
See you, Adam.
All right, we got one more call in here, guys. Here's Tyler.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I got a quick question. I got a buck that I've been monitoring the last 2 years. He beds on this little high spot that is surrounded by the thickest stuff you could imagine, that you cannot put a stand up in a tree. to be able to shoot even more than 5 yards. The only way would be maybe to hunt them on the ground. But my biggest thing is he beds on this high spot because he has every wind direction to his benefit for him to leave if there's any danger. And there's only one way to access him. And I was wondering, is there a certain distance you think that I should try to push to see how close I can get to him in his bed on the ground? It's a really like difficult buck to honestly hunt. I was just wondering if there was any like takes that maybe you guys could have on it.
Me personally, I would say that that's a variable answer. So how close I get to that buck is going to be as close as I can. And by that, what I mean is I'm going to be just beyond his eyesight, just outside of his wind, just beyond his hearing. I'm going to take those things into effect, and I'm going to get as close as I can. In an ideal world, in the type of terrain you're describing, I would hope to get about 75 yards to 100 yards from that bed. That's about how far I get them moving in daylight every time they come out of the beds. I mean, sometimes they move 200 yards, sometimes 3, but they generally get that 75, 100 yards mark in daylight no matter what, when they leave in the evening. So that's the kind of window I try to get to. But really, where I end up is as close as I can get where I'm not going to spook that deer. That's the answer. I can't give an exact yardage.
I got you. Yeah, this buck is he's definitely an old, mature buck. For PA and on public land, he's probably going to go. I had him on camera last year, and he was 165 inches easily last year. He had a drop tine. So it's one that I've really tried to up my game on, and he is pretty solid on using this area. He uses 2 ends of this high spot, and on the back side of it is actually a big access trail that people walk on, and he is bedding 80 yards from an access trail. Literally, he could just turn his head and just watch if you walk by, and you would never even see him, but he can see you. So the only access for me is to come from the way he's going to be watching. So that's what I was trying to say. Like, how close do you think I could push?
You gotta think about what he can see, what he can hear. Like in an ideal world, if I scouted that in springtime and winter, I'd actually go to where those beds are. I'd look around where his beds are. I'd kneel down and I'd look and see what he can see, how far he can see. And at that time, there ain't leaves, so you get that perfect gist. And you look down his trails and you're like, okay, how far can I see? And then you go 20, 30 yards beyond that sight window, and you have a setup. You gotta think about, the sound barrier. I mean, if you're coming through like gooky swamp that we're going to be slurping, if you're coming through really heavy cover where you're going to be making noise, then maybe you got to go in on a rain day when the leaves aren't crunching, or maybe you got to go in on a windy day when you're not making noise in the leaves, or if there's a chance that deer might get a little glimpse of you coming through the brush. The windy days with the movement of the brush, they're less likely to notice you. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into play on how close you get and when. Some of those places I'll reserve for the perfect day, for that wind day, or, if you watched my hunt last year on that big buck, I was waiting for that north wind and for a heavy north wind because I had to sneak around that buck's bed to get to my tree.
Thank you. I appreciate those answers. That's even stuff that I didn't even think about, just like the rain playing a factor, those heavy winds and stuff.
Yeah. Tyler, I've killed 2 mature deer off the ground. Both of them have been high wind days where I could sneak in real quiet and undetected. So I was going to say that, but Dan already did.
Yeah, hunting from the ground for me is something that's going to be completely new. I've only ever killed 1 deer from the ground, so this chasing like a buck like this and being on the ground, it's kind of a little bit of like a scary factor, you know what I mean? Just how hard should I push it? He doesn't seem like he takes a lot of pressure. It seems like if he's bumped one time, he's gone. He's out of the area, and I can't relocate him, so I really think I only have 1 shot truly at him.
Then pick the right day.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yep. See you, man. Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
All right. guys. We have been on for over an hour and a half now. So lots of stuff going on in the chats and lots of questions tonight. So I appreciate everybody getting on. Chad, picture your company, your YouTube channel. Let everybody know what you guys got going on.
All things at Exodus Outdoor Gear. Social, Google, add a .com to it. Just search Exodus Outdoor Gear. You'll find us somewhere.
Yep. You guys got a few podcasts under your umbrella that are really good. What's the land podcast, Deer Gear, and Trail Cam Radio.
The
right?
YouTube channel is awesome too.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming on tonight. If you are you're watching, you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to the channel. We'll get you a chance to win a set of mini beast sticks and a whole bunch of other stuff in the future. So everybody have a good night. Talk to you next week.